In the last episode, we set ourselves up with a Git repository in this local project. Right now, this Git repository only lives on our local machine. So if we have a look at the terminal again, and we have a look at the Git log, we'll see that we have this one single commit that we made in the last lesson. And if we have a look at Git status, it should be showing that there's nothing to commit, working tree clean, which is Git speak for nothing has changed since the last time you asked me to look. Now this is all fine and dandy with this repo only living on our local machine, but if we want other people to be able to look at this, we need to put this somewhere like GitHub where people can actually go see it. First thing I'd recommend that you do is, if you don't have one already, I'd definitely recommend you make yourself a GitHub account. On GitHub you can store as many public repositories as you want for free. That's repositories that other people can look at, and you can have as many private repositories as you want for free now as well, with a couple of limits on how many people can work on them with you unless you pay. So if you don't have a GitHub account, pause the video at this point, make yourself an account, and we'll wait for you until you're ready. So now you've got yourself a GitHub account, you should be looking at a page which is something like this one. Yours will probably be a little bit emptier than mine because I've got loads of people that I'm following and lots of repositories that I'm working on. And up here, you'll see a green new button. Now just before I do that, I'm going to flip over to the end of study organization, and I'm going to make a new repository in here. You get to this page, we're going to make ourselves a new repository. So I'm going to call this VCS course. I'm not going to bother with a description for it, and I'm going to make this repo public. Don't worry about this last step about initialize with a readme, because we don't need to worry about that. Just create the repository, and now it will take you to the repository page. And GitHub will give you a bunch of information that looks like this. In a nutshell, these are the instructions for getting your repo from your local machine onto GitHub, but this can be really intimidating if you haven't actually done this before. So the first thing I'd recommend you do is, if this isn't already on HTTPS, I'd definitely recommend you switch it to that. Copy the URL that it provides and head into your terminal. I'm just going to clear the output here really quickly, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in the directory for my project. So I should have an index.js in here. The working tree should be clean, and we should have a single commit that we created in the last lesson. And we do, that's good. So now that we've got ourselves our URL from GitHub, we need to define our remote. This tells Git where the remote copy of this repository lives. Basically, a remote is another place which is storing a copy of your project. For us, in this case, it's GitHub. And remote is basically just a place where all of your commits will be pushed to, because at the minute they only live on your local machine. When you push them to the remote, they're essentially copied to the remote. Think of it almost like a backup. It makes a safe secondary copy of all your commits and your entire change history, and in this case it also allows other people to view our code. So we're going to type git remote add origin, because that's going to be the name that we call this remote. You can call it anything you want, but typical Git wisdom is that you call the one remote that you're pushing your code to primarily the origin. And then we're going to paste in the URL that we got given. If you're on Windows or you're on Mac, you might need to right click to paste there. But on Linux, you can right click and there's a paste option in the context menu. Now that we've got this remote added, we just need to confirm it really quickly. So if we do git remote-v, it should show us two URLs. They both should be the same URL, one of them for fetch and one of them for push. Because in some really strange setups, you can actually configure GitHub to read from a different remote than it pushes things to. It's really weird. I've never seen an instance of it where it's used, but you can do that. It's very flexible. Now that our remote's defined, we just need to clear the output, and we'll do git status again, just to make sure that nothing's changed. And we need to do git push -u origin master. And what this command is telling Git is that we want to push our commits to the remote, and this U here just means set upstream, which basically tells Git the branch on the remote which this local branch corresponds to. So we're going to have a master branch on our local machine, and we're going to have a master on the remote on GitHub, and whatever is on the remote is what the master branch should be tracking. So these two branches should be level. So once you've got that, press enter, and it'll ask you for your username. And then it'll ask you for your password. And this is inevitably where I've got my password wrong while I'm recording. Yep. Okay, last push. Git push u origin master. And there we go. So in the output that it's actually shown us here, we can see it was just iterating over a bunch of Git objects. These aren't objects in your local files. These are objects that Git has created to represent your files and your changes. But don't worry too much about this. The bit that you're interested in is down here at the bottom. So it'll tell you where you've actually pushed your changes to. It'll tell you any changes that it made on the remote. So in this case, it created a new branch on the remote called master. And it tells us that branch master is set up to track from the remote branch master. So now whenever Git is trying to work out where we are, whether we're in sync, in front of, or behind the remote, it'll have a look at this particular repo on GitHub. So now if we close our terminal and we refresh the page on GitHub, you'll see now that there's our commit that we just made, and there's our index.js file. So if we have a look at this, there's the code that we wrote in VS Code. And now if we have a look at the commits, there's our JavaScript entry point commit. So now your code is available on GitHub, and you should definitely start spamming the link to people because you are super proud of what you've done, and you bloody should be. Good job. In the next video, we'll be having a little bit more of a deeper dive into what a local and a remote is. We're going to be looking at how they're different, and we're going to be looking at how we can pull changes in from a remote when other people have contributed code to the project. I'll see you in the next episode.